Hey everybody, welcome to World Sake Imports Tour and Tastings and today's exciting trip to go visit Kamoizumi Brewery for a fun evening.
Good evening. Good evening, happy people of the world. This is going to be yet a most exciting trip to Japan that we are so happy to host for you. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, have you ever physically been to Saijo before?
I have not, unfortunately, but I know you have, Chris-san.
I have.
Yes, you have.
I've been there a couple times, so it's a really wonderful spot for sake, a great town, lots of fun things. We've enjoyed some really solid events. I've worked and sold sake during an event there. I've promoted things. I'll show you how good I am at it a little bit later today when we get the whole team together, but it should be super fun. We're gonna wait a little bit as we start to gather more people from the waiting room as everybody's joining, and then I'll go over some housekeeping tidbits. But for now, we're just gonna be excited about this trip and getting a chance to venture over to Hiroshima, which is yeah, Saijo. I went down there because Saijo has one of the largest sake festivals in Japan, and I luckily got invited to go down and check out the festival, and I was all psyched. I got a special white jacket that was part of the Saijo festival team, and I was ready to rock it. And Maegaki-san Senior grabbed me and said, "No, you're coming to the brewery." And the next thing I know, I was helping people get sake for the day, both warm and cold and hot and all sorts of versions. It was a ton of fun, to say the least. Lots of good things happening. Welcome to everybody from all over the country. We got a lot of fun people, country, world. I just saw an Australia pop up in there.
Wow.
Looks like we got some Japan. We got a lot of stuff going on. So as we are now getting closer to having a pretty full room, we got about 114 people, a few more in the waiting room as we speak. Lots of people checking in. Thanks for checking in. I'm gonna do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. As I can see, a lot of you have gotten quite comfortable with Zoom and you're already jumping into the chat and sharing your hellos and your greetings. Use the chat for that spot to be able to say hello. This is where you can ask your questions for the brewers and the team of Kamoizumi. Doing it a little bit later. Any hard questions, please hold them for when we get to Q&A, just so that we don't forget those questions. I would love to request that everyone mute and then also turn off their camera for now. And then once you've turned off your camera, there's 3 dots on any person's video you see. If you click on that and select hide non-video participants, then you'll be able to just focus on the team here in Hiroshima and Kamoizumi. So again, if you would please turn off your videos. We're gonna invite everybody back to turn the videos back on later. We promise to make it a fun event when we're doing our tasting or our kampai, but in the beginning, when there's so many people, it's much easier if we can just focus on the special guests, which we're all excited and part of the reason why we're here. A quick note, we will be and are recording this. So if later on when I do invite you to come on up and join us, if you would like to not be recorded, just leave your video off. And if you want to join in for the kampai, please feel free to turn your video on and get involved with the fun. Craig, you've already started welcoming people in the chat. So Craig is our chat host. He will be throwing out interesting little tidbits of information and fun facts and answering the easier questions there. And he will be passing on your questions to us when needed. So again, remember, turn your video off for now and we'll get you back in a little bit later. I'm gonna hand it over for Kerry, who's gonna tell you a little bit about how today's gonna work.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris-san. So we will have a quick introduction of our guests, followed by a tour of the facility and a short presentation about Hiroshima and Kamoizumi. We will taste the sake together with the brewer, but please feel free to sip the delicious elixir to Japan as this presentation is going. And also we'll have a Q&A and an interview with the brewer at the end. So as Chris mentioned, any kind of questions that you may have, please present them in the chat column. And Craig, the man with infinite knowledge, can possibly answer those. But if not, we will address those at the end. Thank you.
Awesome. So real quick, I'm just going to throw up a poll and see what favorite style of sake you enjoy. So there's a little list. Let us know what is the favorites for everybody who's in attendance tonight. Again, we have a few people in the waiting room. We promise we'll get you in as soon as we can. And you're joining us now. So as we're waiting for everyone to answer this poll, we're at about 58% now. I'm going to let you know who I am. My name is Chris Johnson. I am the National Sales Manager for World Sake Imports. I've been a sake geek and a fan for many, many years, dating all the way back to when I was a wee child. And I lived in Japan, and I've been lucky enough to judge sake for a while. Some of you might have come across me as a sake ninja. I am the sake ninja, but I also work for World Sake, and part of our thing is to make sure we get information and fun tours out to our brewers, and that's what's going to happen today. Kerry, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Chris-san. Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Kerry Tamura. I've been working for World Sake for about 10 years, and my journey with sake started actually in Chicago. I took over my family's bar at the time and converted into a sake lounge, which was known as Murasaki. It still exists today. The bar manager bought it, and I moved out to LA, and I've been working for World Sake ever since. Very happy. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to end the poll because we got about 81% of responders in there. 82. People are still jumping in. All right. We're going to end that poll. And I'm going to share the results. And wow.
Oh,
yeah, it was a close race, but it looks like Daiginjo showed up as the most popular style amongst our current participants this evening. And Junmai coming in at a very tight second with only 1 vote less. That's going to be fun because we have a little conversation about Junmai today as well. All right, so we're going to stop sharing that poll. It's time to go figure out where we're going. So, Kerry, we're headed to Hiroshima, and if we can show the next slide and talk a little bit about what's happening.
Hiroshima! So, yes, we are looking at the southern half of Japan. Now, Hiroshima is in the region of the Chugoku region. And actually, the interesting thing about Hiroshima is that the National Research Institute of Brewing was established in 1904 in Tokyo, but they eventually moved their headquarters to Hiroshima, to Saijo city specifically. And essentially, this city is, as Craig has mentioned in the chat room, is one of the top cities, sake-producing cities in the entire country. So are they crazy about sake? Absolutely. Is their sake festival one to go to? Most definitely. That is something to be put on your bucket list. Okay, so so we are at Hiroshima, but specifically, we're going to Higashi Hiroshima. Higashi Hiroshima, so Higashi Hiroshima, and the main mountain in the Hiroshima region, or close to Higashi Hiroshima, is the Ryozan mountain, or Ryo mountain, or Ryozan in Japanese. And the really fun fact about this particular mountain is that annually, 200 people, 200 volunteers gather, and they actually go to the mountain and they manicure it. They remove the invasive trees, the shrubbery, the weeds, and this is all to nurture the domestic trees and also to assist in the irrigation of the water flows. So essentially what they're doing is really getting the most water that they possibly can and all the minerals of this particular ryozan into the water. And then that brings us to the Saijo city, where the beloved, the glorious, the magnificent, the historic, and the holy brewery of Kamoizumi is located.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. So this would be a great opportunity that if I could ask Kazu Maegaki to join us and turn on his camera and say hello. You're on mute.
Sorry. Hello, Chris.
Hello. Hey, Kazu, how are
Hello,
you?
Kerry. I'm fine, thank you.
What's up?
Hello, Kerry. Hello, everyone. I'm Kazuhiro Maegaki, the president of Kamoizumi Brewery. That is the fourth generation. The founder was my great-grandfather, Junmai Maegaki. Yes. Thank you for joining World Sake Imports Online Brewery Tour tonight. So, Maegaki family has run this brewery over 100 years. We are especially focused on making Junmai style sake. And I'm proud to be a pioneer of that. My brewery, Kamoizumi, is located in Saijo, already Kelly said. And that was west part of Japan, not south, west part. And my hometown, Saijo, is called the Sake Town, the capital of sake. And now, tonight, I will be a cameraman. And so we'll introduce a navigator and the director tonight, Mr. Moysset. He is overseas sales representative and is a brewmaster, Toshiyuki Shintani. So he is my second cousin. Gochi.
Hi everyone. Hi Chris. Hi Kerry.
Hey, Gouteir. Shintani-san!
よろしくお願いいたします。
よろしくお願いします。
Well, thank you for joining us all the way from Japan. Gouteir, can you introduce yourself real quick for us?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a French person. I joined Kamoizumi about 2 years before, and I'm working as Kazuhiro said as a export sales representative.
Fantastic. And that gentleman next to you.
トシ新谷。この会社に入って26年、当時になって11年になります。
So he said his name is Shintani, and he joined Kamoizumi 26 years before, 6 years ago, and he's been the brewer master for 11 years now.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for joining us and helping us on this tour. But how about before we get deep into the history and talk about Junmai, Kazu, can you take us on a tour?
Yes.
All right.
Let's start. Hi. So let's start the tour where it's all beginning. I'm now on rooftop of the brewery and change camera. Sorry. I'm now on the rooftop of the brewery, and you can see a lot of chimneys, and the building with a red tiled roof, representing each brewery that are located in Saijo. We are the youngest one, founded in 1912 by my great-grandfather, Junmai Maegaki. The oldest brewery in Saijo is about 350 years old. It was Edo period. On the background of the breweries, you can see the mountains. These are where the water we use come from. About 1.5 miles away from here. rainwater takes about over 50 years to drip underground and arrive at Saijo area. Excellent water quality was the major reason why Saijo became a famous place for sake brewing. And even now, the only one area in Japan with that much breweries in such a small area. That is why
Yep.
That is why with all the breweries of Saijo and its inhabitants, we are taking care of the mountains a few times a year. Okay?
Fantastic.
Yeah. So now I will show you our brewery. Let's go down into the brewery.
Okay.
Yes. Come with me.
Come with you.
Okay, so I will,
Kamoizumi ですね。はい、どうぞ。
I will now take on the lead and I will explain about the brewery. Should I cut the video or can I keep the video?
You're fine.
Okay, good. So did you just understand what you said with "come with me"?
I think it sounds a little bit like Kamoizumi.
Yeah, sure. It was because of the first time when they were going abroad, people were not understanding what Kamoizumi means. So for better understanding, he was just saying, "Come with me." Okay, so in front of the first stage of the sake brewing is the rice washing machine. So we wash the rice that will be sent to the tanks for the soaking. Then the rice will be steamed on the big tanks that you see here. Approximately one tank can go for like 700 kilos. So that's bad. So once the rice will be steamed, it will be transferred into the rice cooling machine, as you can see here. So the rice will go down at about 100 degrees Celsius, and then the cooling machine will take it to 35 degrees, about 35 degrees. So once the rice will be is cooled down, we will bring it to one of the most important room of the brewery, that is the toji room. So you can see here. Okay, so in this room, the rice that has been cooled down will be inoculated with the spores of the koji that will turn it into koji mold to produce enzyme that will convert starch into sugar. The process takes about 2 days. And the room is at also about 35 degrees with high humidity. So this is very hard to work in it. And we have also to think that in winter, when it's very cold outside, we are doing back and forth in very hot rooms and very cold brewery. So we have to get stronger and drink a lot of sake to get stronger. Okay, so once
Sake keeps you strong. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can go now to the fermentation starter room. Okay, good. So this will be the place where we will make the sake mother. We also call it the sake mother. We will add a little bit of the rice koji that made on the previous room, water, and also steamed rice, and the yeast. And then by doing this in a small batch, it will create good environment for the yeast to develop.
Is that yeast right now what he's showing?
Cool.
Yes, he's showing now the yeast. And this is K1 yeast.
Ah, okay.
That's the yeast we use for Shusen.
Awesome. We will be tasting Shusen later.
Sure, yeah. So now he's showing the book, the record book. So we take control of the temperatures of the fermentation starter and also the sugar level. We here at Kamoizumi, we only do Sokujo method. We don't do Yamahai or Kimoto, only Sokujo. Okay, so the first batch will be in this room for about 2 weeks to grow a decent amount of yeast, and then it will be taken to the main fermentation room. So this is the place that we will have the very big tanks.
So lots of stairs and moving around. There's a lot of, must be in very good shape during the winter time with all that exercise.
Yeah.
These are great old pictures.
This is the picture of the previous toji, previous brewer master.
Cool.
Okay, so now we are on the main fermentation room. The big tanks that you can see, they can contain up to 15,000 liters of sake. So once the fermentation starter will be taken to these big tanks, it will take about 4 days to have this its final size. So we will progressively add steamed rice, the koji, and also water. So we can now see inside the tank. So this is very dangerous because if you sleep inside, you will not be able to go out. So the two
Spikes.
Spikes that you can see are the temperature control. So this is all electronically made on the control panel that you can see here. So this is made to always control the temperature of the tanks.
Wow, that's cool. So every tank, you can tell the temperature at all times. You know exactly what temperature it is.
Yeah, 24 hours.
That's fantastic.
So let's now go down into.
So you were saying that as he goes down more stairs for more work, you were saying you have to be careful not to fall in a tank, and that's because there's a lot of alcohol being made and CO2, which means that there's no oxygen for you to breathe. So you definitely do not want to fall into a sake tank. It sounds like a great idea because the alcohol, but it's really not. It's not a good time. You don't want to fall in.
Absolutely, yeah. And often when you smell the sake, if you take too much, you will have the punch of the CO2.
So are those bands around the containers, or is that how you cool it?
Yes, we flow that's like a coating that will send cool water for cooling the main fermentation.
Awesome.
Gouteir, do you know how old these tanks are?
How?
How old the tanks are?
So when the brewery has been made, the new brewery has been made, so you can see H5 on the, can we see the date on the tank, please?
Very streamlined, very clean, well-engineered tanks, other than the tanks that I've seen where they have the wraps around to control the temperature. Very nice.
Okay, so this is the small, yeah, this is the small hatch that you have to go in to clean the tank after the sake has been made. So this is kind of small, but you can enter. It will show us. Okay.
So I could not fit into the tank, so that's good. I won't have to do the cleaning job because I can't fit. It's perfect.
You did the drinking job.
Yes. Wow, that's crazy. That's a big tank.
Yeah, 15,000 liters.
15,000 liters? Wow. That's big.
So it will take about 3 to 4 weeks to for the sake to be done. And then once we have the sake done, we will take it to the filtering area.
Okay, and do you do both different kinds of pressing? Do you do shizuku as well as the more traditional yabuta?
We mainly do the filtering that you see on the machine, but we also do the fukuro shibori
Okay,
for very high-end sake.
fantastic.
So with those machines, the sake will be extracted. So on one side, you will have the liquid, the sake, and on the machine will remain the sake lees, the sake kasu.
I see. So it's basically when we're pressing in a machine like that, they push air to push the liquid through those bags, and then the sake itself goes down. So it's not actually like a big pneumatic press pushing against it. It's more air helping to push the liquid through those mesh to remove the lees. So it's not so intense pressure, and you can control that pressure while you're doing it. And then that's where the kasu remains afterwards, and then you would take that off and use the kasu for other things.
Yeah, we use a kasu for a lot of things. Yeah. So it's showing now the what we use to make the nigori, because
Okay.
nigori yeah, very bit bigger. You have bigger holes to make go the white part, you know.
Yeah, so leaving the lees, what we would say lees in the beverage afterwards. So we will be tasting a nigori later as part of the tasting part. So we'll get to see the two differences.
Yeah. Okay. So it is very good to taste the sake when it's freshly done.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. That's the fun part of the day.
Always.
What is good with the sake is that you have a lot of possibilities, like pasteurizing, aging, doing some blendings.
So I recognize that calligraphy on the right when you first walked over to it. That's the I've seen that logo.
Yeah.
One of it's behind me on the wall, but it's also on one of the bottles we'll be drinking later. You'll tell us about that later, correct?
We can. So it's showing us now the original one.
Awesome.
I will tell about it a bit later.
When we taste, that's fine. So we have one more stop. Oh, there's.
And we will now go to the aging room, aging area. So you can see our chimney.
Yep. Now, does that chimney still work? Are you using it anymore, or is it more decorative at this point?
Now it's decorative and like very special for the sake area. And when you see one chimney, you can be like, oh, there might be a sake brewery here.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so now this is aging room with things that can stay a few years here. And we also do blending and fining here. So this is the fining machine. You can see the front tube.
And so although you use temperature control during the fermentation, it looks as if the aging is all at room temperature?
Yes, room temperature. So during the summer, it's a bit hotter. And in the winter, it's very, very cold.
Awesome. So wintertime cold, summertime hot. So you're getting a range of temperature to help age the sake. That's awesome.
And it will give the sake its characteristics.
Fantastic.
Hmm.
Okay, so thanks for showing us around. Kerry, we have a special guest who's going to tell us a little bit about Junmai before we get to the garden.
For sure. If we just have a continued list of extraordinary people on these Zoom tours today, finally, we are introducing you to the mastermind of World Sake, the founder and Senor Presidente, Chris Pearce, our fearless leader.
Chris, if you could please start your video.
Who I believe still has a flip phone these days. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Scratch that. Chris-san. Irashai. Yoroshiku onegai itashimasu.
You're muted, Chris. You have to unmute.
Okay, all set?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, good. Well, when I heard about this visit to Kamoizumi, I decided to look into the history of Junmai sake a little bit. And I have some old sake books, and I know some old timers, you know, and I made some calls and did a little research. And I found it was really fascinating, you know, to look back to Junmai and its history of, you know, getting started in ancient Japan and being the only kind of sake that anybody drank for, you know, nearly 2,000 years. And also the, you know, the whole thing with added alcohol. You know, Junmai doesn't have any added alcohol, but added alcohol has its own history too that's quite fascinating. You know, ethanol is alcohol. That's the chemical name for alcohol. It doesn't matter if it comes from making wine or making whiskey. It could be champagne, could be gin, could be organic, could be not organic. Once it's inside your body, it's alcohol. It's all the same. There's no difference to alcohol. Japanese people started making alcohol about 1,400 years ago. It's kind of lost in the mists of time, but there's early references to it about that time. What they made was Junmai sake using just rice and water. That was the only ingredients that they had. And that's the way that they made sake from 1,400 years ago, pretty much up until 1970. The only exception was they did use added alcohol a little bit. The most technically advanced breweries in Japan at that time were located in Nara area. And they discovered that if you added brewer's alcohol just before you press the sake or just after you press the sake, you could preserve it better as it was shipped up to Tokyo and other places around Japan. It acted kind of as a preservative. And the distilled sake got to Japan by a long route. I mean, distillation was discovered by the Arabs in the 9th century, and from there it spread to India, and Thailand was part of the Indian cultural sphere, so they started making distilled products very early. And then Okinawa was the leading trading nation of that period because Japan and China were closed off. So in the 1500s, Okinawans went down to to Thailand, they discovered alcohol, distilled alcohol. They brought the technique back to Okinawa, started making awamori. And then from there, it gradually worked its way up into Japan. So, that's part of the added alcohol is actually part of the history of sake too. So it sort of continues like that. And what really changes things is the Second World War. And in 1937, war broke out between Japan and China. And all of a sudden, there was not enough rice to go around. They just had many, many usages for rice. Japan was, waging war. And the whole economy went on to a wartime footing. And the Japanese government took over the control of the sake industry. Well, this is usually not a good idea, right, for the government to take over an industry. What happened in Japan when that happened was they said their goal now is to make as much sake as possible from as little rice as possible. And what that meant was if you were a sake maker, you couldn't polish your sake more than, polishing ratio couldn't be less than 87%. You could only polish 13% of the rice, and you couldn't make it stronger than 10% alcohol. So this sake was so horrible that everybody called it goldfish sake. That's how it was referred to, kingyo sake in Japan. And that was all people could get. As a result, the reputation of sake went down. They had to put in some kind of grading system. So they put in a grading system of special sake, first class, and second class sake. But from our perspective today, it was all futsushu. There wasn't anything that we would consider like a quality sake. And that's kind of how it went on. It reached the point in 1943 that they didn't make any sake at all. And the Japanese government asked many breweries to use their brewery just to make distilled alcohol. And the distilled alcohol, they refitted the Zero fighter bombers so that they could burn alcohol as fuel instead of gasoline. And so this is what they did in 1943. And that didn't last long. The end of the war came in 1945, but the rice shortage continued for several years. There was famines, there wasn't enough rice to go around, there was starvation, in pockets of Japan at that time. And in 1949, there was so little rice to go around for sake making that the law was passed that said, okay, you can make what's called sambaishu, which means triple output sake. That means that the sake can have 1 part alcohol from natural fermentation and 3 parts alcohol that's added alcohol, distilled alcohol that you can purchase. And that became the so-called sambaishu that they made in the 50s and 60s throughout Japan. So I'm sure many of you have heard, that sake has this reputation for giving you a terrible headache. But we know, because we drink it frequently, that that's not the case. You might wake up the next morning and be a little slow, but you're not going to have a splitting headache if you drink sake. But if you drink sambaishu, you will definitely have a splitting headache. And that contributed to the lousy reputation, of sake drinking for a long time. So this is kind of the way it was in Japan in 1970. The breweries were all making these massive amounts of sake. The whole Japanese economy was running on alcohol. People were consuming vast amounts. I mean, they're the highest per capita sake consuming country in the world by far then. And that's the way it was. And then a few breweries started thinking, well, wait. Are we making sake, or are we making, some kind of chemical painkiller, And they went back to, they said, let's get back to it. Let's get back to the roots of it. Let's get back to real sake, back to Junmai sake. And there were a few breweries that had that same kind of thinking. And they got together and formed an association that originally they called the Non-Additive Sake Association. And this was in 1973. And there were 11 breweries. Kamoizumi was one of the founding ones. Another one was Tama no Hikari from Kyoto that had actually introduced a no alcohol added sake very early in 1966, I think it was, 1964. Kamoizumi introduced one in 1972. And there were very, very few breweries that were doing it at that time. So they wanted to do this, but at that time, there's nothing called Junmai sake in the store. They only got the EQ, NIKU, Tokyu sakes. So they went to the National Sake Brewers Association and lobbied, to get these categories in place as part of the identity of sake. And by the next year, they were successful. And so you could buy a bottle of sake. It still might say Nikyu on it, but it would say Junmai Shu or it would say Ginjo. And it wasn't in 1994, until 1994, that the whole EQ and NIKU first grade, second grade system got, they quit it, got thrown out. It was replaced by Junmai Ginjo, Daiginjo. So it's all relatively recent, Junmai sakes, they don't go back more than 1972 as a product that you could buy in a store. I don't know, it's just, it's in a way, what's fascinating for me is that it's such an ancient tradition, that goes back, so far back in Japanese history, Junmai sake. But at the same time, it's a new thing, that's just come out comparatively recently in the sake world. And of course, the sake that we drink today is, totally different from the sake they drank so long ago because of the advances in technology and quality of rice and all that. But it's just quite an interesting story. And I guess if there's a takeaway to it, it's that one of the breweries, one of the very few breweries that led this revolution, this change to Junmai, was the Kamoizumi Sake Brewery.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
That was awesome. I learned a lot, which is always a good thing as we learn more about all these wonderful things. So I think everybody's ready to do the next part of this show, and that would be to taste sake. So if everyone would get ready, if you want to, and again, I'll remind you that we are recording. If you want to share your video screen, this is the time to do so, and come join us so we can do a little tasting. And of course, before we go deep into that tasting, we're going to do what we love to do, a kampai. So best way to do this is then hit your gallery view so you can see everybody. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Grab your sakes. Let's get ready to go. So we're going to start out with the Kamoizumi 3 dots Shusen to do our quick kampai. As we get into the kampai, Kazu-san, we're gonna ask everybody to stay muted so that we can hear Kazu and talk about the sakes. But before we get into the descriptions, let's just do a quick kampai. Kazu, are you there? Gouteir, you there? Can you unmute? And you guys wanna lead the kampai?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, raise your glass. Thank you for joining us, and kampai.
Kampai.
So a little later, we're going to take a quick look at the beautiful garden that's behind Kazu. I'm going to spotlight his video just so you guys can see him real quick. They're sitting in front of the garden with their sakes, the team behind the beautiful Kamoizumi program. But real quick, Kerry, can you just do a quick introduction of Shusen for us?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris-san. Oh my gosh, this is so delicious. 1 second. Oishi. Okay, so Kamoizumi Shusen, a pure Junmai. Now this has been made with two very interesting rice varietals, not too common in the sake world in general, but it's the Nakata Shinsenbon and the Hiroshima Hattan. The ABV, as you can see, is 16%. For those of you who are interested, the acidity is 1.7, and the sake meter value is +1. And also the yeast that they use is Ka-1. What I enjoy about this sake, it is absolutely versatile in the sense that in terms of temperatures, I like to enjoy it first off cold, let it just sit on the table, and as it warms up to room temperature, it carries on with the meal. Really, also just tasting kind of reminds me of the Midwest, especially as we're heading into the fall. And yes, so appropriately this picture is depicting just that really cozy feeling, just something that's familiar and something I like to call old world sake, but just absolute a masterpiece of a Junmai. and so reasonably priced. Enjoy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kerry. Gouteir, can you tell us a little bit about the story behind Three Dots?
Yeah, sure. So as Chris, Pearce, the founder, explained just before, the Shusen was born post-war when a lot of alcohol, brewers' alcohol, were added in the sake. But Kazuhiro grandfather decided to reintroduce the Junmai production. So they became pioneer in 1972 after more than 6 years of trying, of making a lot of tests in the sake brewing. So the sake found its final form, as I said, in 1972, when it was brought to the Todaiji temple. Do you know Todaiji in Nara?
Yes, I do know it.
So the sake was used for a ceremony for the highest monk, that was Kaiun Kamitsukasa. And all of the guests of the ceremony found the sake very nice, very interesting, and especially one person that was a chief of a very renowned restaurant in Osaka. And the chief said, "This sake is very interesting, so I want to use it for my restaurant." And then Shusen started to sell around Japan.
Oh, fantastic. That's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, for everyone who's enjoying it, obviously the nose here is fantastic and expresses that kind of mushroomy, slight notes of shiitake and that beautiful earthy kind of amazing umami. And as a couple of people have mentioned, the temperature of this sake is really, really unique, especially when it comes to enjoying with food. One of the great things about Kamoizumi as a producer is that they are very much so a sake that's built around and meant for food, whether it be traditional Japanese food or Western food. It really is this this wonderful component. So we'll enjoy that. Craig, you want to give us a quick review of the next sake, and Dave, show us the second sake, please.
As you guys, so the Kamoizumi red maple, this is like one of those like rarities in the sake world that we can experience. I mean, being a Nama Genshu, so it is raw, primal, it's Genshu, it's from the source. And yet at the same time, you know, we age it a little bit. And when we say age, you know, we let it relax. And it concentrates the richer flavors of the sake beyond what anybody else can do. I mean, this truly, like if you're, oh, I love a kijoshu, I want a koshu, I want a whatever. They should always start with red maple, a whiskey lover, a gin lover, anybody. I mean, this is it. And, you know, Kamoizumi being like amongst one of the first to like create something like this and release it, crazy good.
Awesome. All right, let's go back to Gouteir real quick, and he can tell us a little bit about the story behind red maple. Hi, everybody. Don't forget, when you have a glass of sake in your hands, there are a couple words that we often say, and Gouteir can say it this time. It starts with a kan, and it ends with a pai. Why don't we try that one more time? Kanpai.
Kanpai.
Okay.
Kanpai.
Tell us a little bit about this sake.
2 years aged in 5 degrees temperature fridge. About this sake story is very interesting because well, a long time ago when Chris Pearce was coming in the brewery for looking for new sake, he was always saying, "Don't you have new sake? Don't you have new sake?" And we didn't have and he knew sake to give him.
I love this story so much.
What we served him was a 1 year aged namazake, and it was in 2006. And then he decided to import it in America, but there was in 2007 and 2008 the crash that so we couldn't send the sake. So the sake unfortunately aged 2 years, but when we tasted it was fantastic. So that's how it came up.
Yeah, that's so much fun. It's a really, really fun sake. Again, it was an unknown beverage that it was going to become a brand, and it did, which is super, super fun. Shintani さん、さっき言ってたけど、鴨泉で日本酒作り始まったはいつだでした？
26年前。
26年前。
だからさっきのエンジニアとほとんど同級生、同い年。
で、ずっと鴨泉ですか？
はい、そうです。
All right, so I just was trying to find out a little bit about the man behind the sakes, and we were just checking with his history. So he's been at Kamoizumi for 26 years. This is the only brewery he's worked at, and he makes absolutely fantastic sake with the family. All right.
And
so
one note about the red maple as well, which is interesting. It is not available in Japan. This is a product that only can be found in the US. So everyone enjoy indeed.
So we're going to get ready for our next sake, everybody. We're going to go into the Kamoizumi Nigori Ginjo, or Summer Snow. This is a Nigori, so please remember to mix it up. It is important to to allow the leaves to interact with the rest of the beverage. This is also made with local rice varieties. It's polished to 58%. It's about 18% alcohol, and it's just a really full flavored sake, in my opinion. This is what one would consider a more drier version of a Nigori, and I think it brings this robust kind of little background taste. For me, and as you smell it and pour it in your glass, think a little bit more of roasted coconut versus fresh coconut, or tropical banana versus that bright, ripe yellow banana that you can often smell in sake. There's just a lot of depth, and it's super, super food friendly, as all of the Kamoizumi sakes are. All right, Gouteir, please tell us a little bit more about this sake. Gouteir, you ready?
Sorry for making you wait. So the sake, same as the previous one, was found by Chris Pearce when he came to the brewery asking for sake, and we didn't have any other sake to propose him. But this sake at that time was only sold very locally, only a few hundred of bottles, and he found it very interesting because it was Junmai Ginjo in Nama and in Nigori, and this is it is very strong Nigori.
Yeah, I mean, Nigori traditionally, at least in my experience in the US, was more of a sweeter beverage, more of that, again, banana and coconut, not necessarily high in alcohol. And this kind of is that kind of, wow, that's totally different. Beautiful texture on the sake. Are you gonna watch this? Super fun.
No kanpai. Shall we have
The kanpai 行きましょう。
Do you want to do another kanpai with this one? Okay, Shintani-san, it's your turn to start the kanpai.
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 Kanpai, Nini-san.
So
Hi, Kerry.
Gouteir, this is for Shintani-san again, or even Kazu. This nigori is not easy to make, right? There's a little bit more of a difficult process than just filtering it through that fine mesh. So I feel like a little bit more happens than just that. Can you explain the nigori creation process a tiny bit?
Do you want me to explain?
Or you can explain, or you can ask Shintani-san to explain, or we can translate, or whatever you like.
I will do my best. So, so we have the main fermentation tank that has been fermenting for 3 to 4 weeks, as I said before. For making nigori, we will first take out a bit of the molomi, what we call molomi, the main fermentation part. And we will filter with what we show you just before, the
The container, yeah, we saw the container, that's fine.
the small container. So it will only let go very small particles that you can find now in the sake.
Yep.
So we take about 28% of the white part, and the remaining will be filtered like the usual method. So it will be clear and the unfiltered part. Yeah.
Wow, it's really, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you that are participating and are lucky enough to have all 3 sakes, but all these sakes are very, very different. The flavor profiles are different. They express themselves entirely different. I think that's a really fun thing. Gouteir is going to tell us something really unique about this, but one of the things that I love about when people talk about terroir and people talk about styles of sake, what the brewer and the brewery decide to do is extremely important in how that final product ends up in your glass. It's not just the rice and it's not just the water. It are the decisions and the human impact on the production of this amazing beverage that truly affect what you end up getting in that glass and what you end up sipping as we are here. And Kazu or Gouteir, can you tell me something unique about this sake?
About the sake?
About the 3 sakes.
Yeah,
They're all
so
powerful.
actually the 3 sake that we have here are from the same main fermentation batch. This means they are
That's true.
brothers and sisters.
Brother and sister. With sister.
Sister? They are all brothers.
But they're all, I mean, how amazing is that it is not just that they made decisions while making the product which affects flavor profiles. These are decisions that were after the main fermentation happened that has then created 3 entirely different beverages that you've experienced tonight, right? One, the shusen, that's pressed, removed the lees and then aged and then pasteurized to give it that depth of that aging at those different temperatures. The red maple that has been aged for 2 years and still remains as an unpasteurized sake that's giving you all that kind of depth and intensity. And then the youngest of the three kyodai in the nigori, that is a nigori genshu, so cask strength or undiluted. It's also a namasake and bringing you all those bright flavors. But yet again, this all came from the very same fermentation tank, which is very cool. Kazu, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to spotlight somebody's video real quick because he is wearing a Carp jersey.
Puma.
Oh, hello.
Make sure that you could see that
On Puma.
at the moment.
It's a little outdated.
OG.
Yes, exactly.
So, Gouteir, I do have one question that came up in the chat that I saw. That the question is during pressing of the nigori and the production of the nigori, what temperature are you keeping the nigori, and what temperatures it come out of the press? Is it cold because it's made in the dead of winter, and then does the nigori itself go through any aging at colder temperatures, or is it released relatively quickly so it stays bright in that Nama style?
So we are filtering the nigori in winter, so it kind of cold season, very cold season, and we will do all the bottling in the very quick time. And we will bottle and keep it in the fridge.
And then ship it. Okay, fantastic.
Was the question answered?
Yes, I feel like it was. I will follow up with Corey Nordica to make sure the question was answered to his liking later.
Okay, good.
We do have an extra sake for those of you who might not have been able to get the red maple. We have the Happy Bride that we can taste real quick. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. If you want to ask a question directly, just raise your hand on the screen to let us know, and we'll bring you up and you can ask that question live. So Happy Bride is kind of a fun, low alcohol sake, really light, nice soft tartness, almost like we've said, like a Riesling. The main reason for this is that we do have that in certain places throughout the US, and I wanted to share it with everyone who was not able to get some of the other sakes. Really fun, pretty sake, really easygoing, but it is a unique process for making it, and I would truly love, as we turn this off and go back to the main team, to have Kazu, Gouteir, or Shintani Toji explain how you make kome kome. 米米の作り方はどういうふうに作ってますか？
基本的には元の段階で絞る。で、大事故で3段組みしてずに、それで、元、主母を絞る、醸造する。はい、で、感じでやります。発酵は、1週間から7日から10日発酵させて、元の段階で絞る感じです。で、原材料に、米エキスといって、お米から来た、エキス分を入れて、水の一部で、その米エキスを入れて発酵させて作ったお酒です。ですから少しなんかこう乳酸っぽいようなヨーグルトっぽい香りがあるのはそのエキスの影響だと思われます。OK?
Kerry, you want me to go at it?
As you wish. I kind of lost him midway, but I can explain if I. Well, you know, well, so I believe you were saying that essentially 7 to 10 days of fermentation, and very short fermentation. Usually, when the method that they use, the sokujo method, is about 10 to 14 days. But 7 to 10 days, very, very short, which essentially you have most of the residual sugar still allowing to remain in the mash. So that's how they were able to achieve the sugar content of the sake. After that, I wasn't paying attention that much.
So if I,
so sorry.
Kazu-san, correct me, or Gouteir, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he said that you press from moto. So it's pressed much earlier and not gone through the main components of the fermentation, so that the natural acidity that's already there from the sokujo method remains in the sake itself, which gives it that touch of yogurt and that slightly higher acidity, which is really playful on the palate and quite enjoyable in kind of an alternative space. And that's where the kome comes from, that you're tasting the rice and the natural acidity from said rice. But another fun sake to enjoy as we get together. So we're done with our tasting part. What we do at this point is we do ask all of you that are still here and on the video to grab a bottle, grab a glass, and raise it to the camera, and we get a nice little photo